Good evening, everybody. I have the pleasure of trying to rally this group and have you take your seats. All right, folks, please make your way to your seats. We're going to try and get the program started on time. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got the 30-second countdown. Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing to heckle with me. All right, I think we're going to get the program started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Target. I'm the chair of the Education Committee here at the Union League Legacy Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's public affairs program. The Legacy Foundation is the nonprofit charity of the Union League, guided by the United States Constitution and the history and values of the Union League. The foundation's goal is to create more informed, more engaged citizen leaders. And we do this through dozens of programs, lectures, scholarships, and exhibits, including programs like this evening's public affairs program. And all the programs of the Legacy Foundation are made possible through voluntary contributions from Union League members and others who share our values. So many thanks to all of those with us this evening who are generous donors and help make this program possible. So to cover a few housekeeping items, the first is, of course, to ask everyone to silence their cell phone, perhaps turn it off if that's possible. So tonight's program will run for about an hour, and toward the end of the program, our guests will answer questions from our audience. Please write your questions on the paper that was on your chair, and our staff will be around to pick up the questions. Tonight's program is the second in a three-part series that we've been talking about for a little while now, covering the future of Philadelphia, leading up to the very important primary on May 2nd. The focus of tonight's program is the quality of life. And moderating tonight's program is our very own John Miko, Executive Director of the Legacy Foundation. Joining John are two leaders in the Philadelphia community, Paul Levy and Michael Schulson. Paul is the founding chief executive of the Center City District, serving in that capacity since January of 1991. The mission of the Center City District is to keep Philadelphia's downtown clean, safe, beautiful, and fun. They provide security, cleaning, and promotional services that supplement but do not replace the basic services provided by the city of Philadelphia and the fundamental responsibility of property owners. The CCD also makes physical improvements, installing and maintaining lights, signs, banners, trees, and landscape elements. The district encompasses 233 blocks and more than 1,500 properties. So joining Paul this evening is Michael Schulson. Michael is the chef restaurateur, and entrepreneur behind the Schulson Collective and restaurants, whose imagination and ingenuity have made him one of Philadelphia's most successful hospitality professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest and John Miko.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Steve. Welcome, Paul and Michael and Steve. Had a fine introduction to both of them. I just want to add, we have here really two of the great leaders in Center City in particular with us this evening. And I was talking to Michael just a moment ago. If you don't know Michael, you know his restaurants, because except for the Union League of Philadelphia, almost everything on Sampson Street is a Michael Schulson restaurant. And of course, Paul Levy's been working for Center City and in Center City for 32 years. We have an incredibly important election coming up in 2 months. We have a mayor will be elected. We have, and he'll replace someone who's been in City Hall for almost as long as Paul has been in Center City District, I think. We'll have a lot of change in City Council, including a new president of City Council. But before we get into all that, I want start with you, Paul, to give us some context. And we are going to focus a little bit more on Center City than maybe we would in some other programs. But Paul, you started in 1991. What did Center City look like, and how is it different than today?
You know, it's funny when I talk to millennial audiences, I'm the old historian looking around the room with all the hair my color. I'm just telling you what you already know here. But to be serious, I mean, look, we were a city with really great historic neighborhoods in the downtown. We had an office district that was essentially a 9 to 5 option or opportunity. That meant that every retailer on Chestnut and Walnut Street rolled down their solid security gates at 5:15 or 5:30, and the streets were largely empty in the core of the downtown. There were perhaps 40 fine dining restaurants compared to the 499, of which Michael has 11 of them. But very few restaurants, no convention center, no Kimmel Center. The Avenue of the Arts was just an idea. So really very minimal hospitality industry, limited restaurant industry. I think a very vibrant, walkable downtown, but essentially a 9 to 5 downtown that was just streets filled with litter, graffiti over everything. And it was a sense of pessimism, I think, in the city in 91, despite all the great, I mean, the 80s were Liberty 1, Liberty 2, Mellon Bank Center. So we had a lot of positive activity, but at street level, at sidewalk level, a real sense of dismal situation.
And Michael, when you entered the scene here in Philadelphia, it was a much different place.
Yeah, I moved here in 1995 from New York. And I remember coming to Philly for the first time in my life at that point. And I was just kind of walking down the streets and looking at the city, and it felt like a ghost town for me. Paul and I were kind of joking about it. If you think back to 2 years ago during COVID, right, when it hit, that's kind of what Philly felt like to me back in the early 90s, because I didn't see the transformation of what it was to what it became. So that's kind of what Philly.
So why did you come to Philadelphia?
You know, I had a great opportunity to work at Lebec Finn, and I thought Philly was a great place. I was talking about starting up a family, and New York, I couldn't afford. I couldn't really do much there. A bunch of my friends were here, and I had some financial opportunities to get a nice job and a start. And I thought, okay, maybe I could open up maybe 1 50-seat restaurant and see what the rest brings for me.
Well, we're glad you stayed.
Glad
you stayed. So originally, when we thought about this, and Steve's committee put these 3 programs together, we actually had crime in the title, but we took that out. But we're going to go right back into it, because crime, it seems to me, and if you look at what the voters are interested in, is the #1 issue right now among Philadelphia voters. Crime is up, especially if you look back 8 years. Violent crime is up dramatically. Homicides are up across the city. And we'll get into a little bit of the differences, Paul, with Center City and the rest of it. But let's get right into it. What can we do about crime in this city? What should be done? And what are some of our what are some of those that want to be leaders in Philadelphia, our mayoral candidates saying? And I'll start with you, Michael. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
on
so,
crime?
so first, and we said this to you earlier, I said, if you think about crime in this city, we could all sit here and we could all bash our leadership all night long, and we're going to be here for an hour and we're just going to bash. So Paul and I agreed, we're going to try not to do that too often. We're in this situation. I think that somebody once said to me during COVID, I was talking to one of my business partners, and he said, listen, Michael, the best thing you could do during COVID right now, or during adversity, is the right thing. The second best thing that you could do is the wrong thing. And the worst thing that you could do is do nothing. And I think that right now we're very stagnant in terms of what we're trying to do. And we need to change it. I think we're starting to feel some change now. There was some legislation that was enacted in council. And we were meeting with the police department leaders on a daily basis. And the morale of the department is shot. It's shot. They don't want to be police officers. You could look back with this whole concept of what our nation created when we started this whole thing of defund the police. Okay. I would walk around the city and I would look at a police officer and I would say, thank you for your service. And they would look at me in like tears of thank you. Thank you for supporting us. And our city created some legislation that was really bad. You can't pull people over right now for noise violations. You can't pull them over for broken taillights. And you can't, if you find a gun, we do nothing with it. They enacted something where you have to be a resident of Philadelphia in order to be a police officer, and you have to stay there. So if you have kids, that's a really challenging situation. We don't pay as much. And we just created this whole cycle that we can't get out of. And that's kind of what the situation is that I see it. And we need to start changing that. And I think it changes things that Paul's doing, and he could get into them, but it changes with the business leaders. And I think that that's what our responsibility is. I looked at politics as something, and I said, I have no interest in being involved in politics. Okay. I try not even to be a face of the Schulson Collective. I'm like behind the scenes. But what I recognize is I have 2 kids. I have a lot of square feet. We have 1,500 employees here in Philadelphia. And now I need to get involved.
So Paul, we didn't defund the police in Philadelphia, right?
Correct.
But we do have a lot of challenges in the way we're approaching crime. We have a DA who has a different approach than previous DAs. 2 things. You mentioned city council, and that's interesting that you didn't mention the mayor. You mentioned city council. I think that's a little different, and there could be different reasons. Paul, talk about the politics of crime, if you would, or how is Philadelphia built to approach the crime situation?
Let me approach this slightly differently,
Mhm.
because I think I like to talk about a two-handed approach to public safety. On the one hand, you go to one extreme, and those of you who were around in the Frank Rizzo years know what a really aggressive, sometimes racist and abusive police department could be like. You go to the other extreme and say all of these problems can only be solved by social service and by programs that help neighborhoods. And the reality is you need a blended approach. We need police who enforce the law, but enforce it according to the law, not violating the law. And we need to address the really substantial problem of poverty in this city, but it's not an either or choice. And just to jump ahead to the campaign, anyone who tells you this is a police solution only, or anyone who tells you this is a social service solution only, is not offering you a real solution to the problems of the city. So clearly, when you have a city with a 21 to 23% poverty rate, what that tells you is this is a city with not enough jobs. So clearly we need a much more vibrant economy. It needs to be growing, but we also just can't have people ignoring every single law that there is. I think where the consensus is, and you'll hear it a lot, is in this expression, community policing. We want police officers who are on foot, on bicycle, who are interacting with communities, interacting with neighborhoods, knowing people, so they're not an occupying army. And we need also to recognize there are a whole lot of issues in this city which we ask the police to handle. Dealing with mentally ill homeless people is not the thing that most police are trained for. We need to create partnerships. We need to bring police together with mental health workers. We need to bring social service programs together with criminal justice programs. And that's happened in this city. We're doing it within our own organization. It's happening in other cities. So I think we need to talk about this two-handed blended approach. I could be more specific, but I think to the extent we veer to one extreme or another, we're not going to solve this problem of public safety.
So, Michael, what's the effect? And I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. So COVID hits and you're shut down. Most of the city is shut down. Crime does go up. And then you reopen and we're in a different place, not just with crime, but all kinds of other things. What's been the effect on your business?
Honestly, right now, so I'll take it from the good, we're busier than we've ever been before, which is a fascinating thing, knock on wood, okay? When the crime hit, okay, and this whole city, everyone left the city, okay? Everyone was running away from the city. We want to go to the shore, we want to go everywhere. And I'll start this by saying, I live in the city. I work in the city. My kids live in the city. I tried to send them to public school in the city. Unfortunately, you can't go very far in public school in the city. So it's a problem. Okay. So we would walk out of the house. It was a ghost town in this city. And you hear these stories of nobody wants to come in. Everyone's afraid. Okay. So I actually pick up the phone and I call our mayor. Okay. I said, Jim, I said, we have a problem here. There's shootings going on in front of my building, right on Rittenhouse Square. And he says, Michael, there's shootings going on in West Philly. There's shootings going on in North. There's shootings going on every day in these neighborhoods. You finally see what it's like. I said, but the bigger problem is 90% of the tax dollars are coming from a 5-block radius. And I said, Jim, if you lose this 5-block radius, we're done. We're done. And businesses are leaving, businesses left. Okay. Residents are leaving. We used to look at Center City. The greatest thing is we would have all these older folks, empty nesters, right? Empty nesters, the dream was like, okay, your kids are out of the house. We're going to come back to the city. And this whole disarray was created. And now we have to figure out how to solve it. And I was talking to some people who were running for mayor, and they're talking about raising taxes again. Okay. We've been raising taxes for 60 years now. It doesn't work. Okay. You talk about jobs needing to be created. Okay. In Boston, the average median income is about $85,000. In Philadelphia, I think it's $40,000, I believe.
57.
57. We have the most amazing colleges here. Okay. Think about us. We have the most amazing colleges, brilliant kids. They're leaving. Why are they leaving? Because businesses aren't opening here. Okay, think about the amount of large companies we have. Businesses are leaving the city. They're going to Conshohocken. Why are they going to Conshohocken? Okay, comes back to our leadership. It comes back to businesses. We need to get the businesses here, and that's our job as business leaders. And once we solve that, I believe that we could fix the crime and everything else, but it starts at the top with businesses.
So let me give a more positive take on that, not in any way minimizing the challenges. At this moment, we have 74% of the volume of people we had in the city pre-pandemic, 74%, okay? Among residents, there are 29% more residents in Center City than there were in 2019. Hard to believe, because the demographic that Michael's talking about, which is the empty nesters, the buyer of condos, that is a very challenged demographic. Younger people who are risk oblivious, they are flocking into the city. The apartments that are going up are filling up. So we're attracting younger people. We're not necessarily retaining people 55 and 60 and older, but we have more people in Center City. The convention and tourism industry is back. There will be more than 1,000,001 people at the convention center, but that's about 75 to 80% of what we had beforehand. On office workers, all workers. Among all employees, we're at 60% of pre-pandemic levels. In the office sector, we're at 44%. All right. And now going to this previous point, you know what it is in the Pennsylvania suburbs? It's 60 to 65%. That's the fear of crime issue. Okay. I want to be clear that I'm not minimizing that issue. But I will tell you that within the boundaries of our districts, what we have done is with the shortage of police, we've added 80 public safety people to the street who are civilians. Our own foot patrol, a 40-person bike patrol, very closely partnered with the police because there's a real diminishment of police citywide. Crime within the core of the downtown is 10.8% lower than it was in 2019, but it doesn't feel that way, okay? Because we're only at 75% of pedestrian level activity. So we've got a situation where it's actually statistically safer, but doesn't feel that way. Why? Because you've got a real gun violence issue problem across the city. We've had a handful of very high profile events in Center City, but they're really the exceptions, but they're unnerving exceptions. I will say to you, maybe put this somewhat crudely, in 2019, if you had seen a mentally ill person acting out on a busy street, you would have said, okay, I mean, it's a problem. If you're on an empty street and you see that same person, you're really anxious because in your head is this issue of crime and safety in the city. So I'm not minimizing we have a real gun violence issue in this city. It is primarily not a problem in Center City. It is a citywide issue, but the perception issue, and I'm not being critical of television, they're covering what's happening. But that coverage has created a negative halo over the city. So I think we need obviously to rebuild the police department. We need to reinvest in community policing. We need a mayor who leads around this issue, but we need a private sector who's going to step up more as well in this regard. So it's not that I disagree with what Michael's saying, because that's what the feeling is and that's what the perception is. But I think we've turned the corner on that. And I think we need to build on that. And I think that's what we want to expect from the next mayor. Is a real commitment to leadership around public safety, but also growing jobs. And I agree with Michael, we've got to lower wage and business taxes. The mayor actually has put out a proposal to do that again for the first time. But those of you who are here for the second term of Rendell and for all 8 years of John Street, we saw a steady reduction in wage and business taxes and we grew jobs. So we know what to do in this city. We've just got to get back on that path again.
So assuming that the next mayor wants to do something about these issues.
Right.
Why
would they run for office if they don't want to do something about these issues, right?
We'll assume they do.
Okay.
What are some of them saying about these issues and what policies and how would they work with the DA, with the police to implement some of them? And again, city council seems to be playing a little bit more of a role in some of these areas. Michael,
Look, we were talking about city council. I mean, you think about city council. Think about a city of our size, okay? This is the only city in the United States where city council could just create their own legislation and pass it through without any for anything or anything else. Okay, it's mind-blowing. They just pass legislation and all of us sitting in this room are stuck dealing with it. Okay, and it happens on a daily basis. And it's 16-1, 17-0. Look, we need to get the business communities behind us. That's what the leaders in my mind needs to do. It's a whole circle. You could talk about crime all day. You could talk about business all day. You could talk about education all day, safety, all of these pieces. And those are the things that are important to everybody. They want to hear what the potential next mayor is going to do on all of these things. Okay. It all has to work together. It all has to work together as a team. And in order to do that, everyone in this room has experience, whether it's with a friend, a loved one, a wife, your business. Our job as business leaders or people is to bring people together. And that's what our next leader has to be able to do better than anyone else, okay? We need somebody who could bring people together. You could work as a team. You could garner votes from this person. You could get, I mean, think about it, University of Penn. Their taxes, what they pay are minimal. Comcast, minimal compared to what they should. But you know what? You know that these businesses want to participate. They want to participate in our great city. They will participate, but you got to pull them in. You got to pull these people in all these ways and have everyone work together to create harmony. And that's what's missing.
Paul, what do you think our next mayor might do and should be doing.
What, number one, the mayor needs to be visible out there and a positive cheerleader for the city, not kind of false. Well, okay. I mean, clearly, we've been through not one crisis, but three, right? The pandemic, the shutdown, right? And then civil unrest. All three of those happened on top of each other. Those were incredibly unnerving to the city. And obviously unnerving for people with businesses and living here. So that the mayor needs to be in a position of cheerleading and being positive for the city. But I think, as Michael was saying, we got to get past that adversarial relationship with city council. The mayor is elected to lead the whole city. They obviously need to work with individual city council people, but they need to lead city council, not follow city council, which we've seen too much of in recent years. So I think the strength of personality is really key here. But as I said, somebody who's not, if somebody gets elected and saying, I'm going to bash everybody's head with a nightstick, or somebody says, I'm going to solve every problem by just funding social services programs, they're lying to you. You need to blend the public safety with education, with job growth, with social services to really regrow this city. I mean, Michael alluded to this, 42% of all jobs in the city are right here in Center City. Another 11% are in University City. So half of taxes, half of the revenue, half of the job, more than half of the taxes are generated out of the center of the city. You've got to make this a vibrant place. You've got to make this a safe place. And because of a transit system, these jobs are accessible. These jobs are accessible to people from every neighborhood in this city. And the biggest crime to me of the shutdown, I don't mean to use the word crime, but when office buildings close, janitors lose their jobs. When office buildings close, maintenance workers lose their jobs. When office buildings close, Michael's employees in his restaurants lose their jobs. We need to think about this as one city. And the growth of Center City and University City creates jobs for everybody in this city. You want somebody who expresses that vision, leads that vision, and makes government work. I think that's key. We want our trash picked up on time. It's got real basic requests, but it's something we need to get done from the next mayor.
I have a very specific Center City, well, it's beyond Center City problem I want to talk about.
Okay.
ATVs. And I think this is a major problem. I don't think it's a small problem. Was talking in my office today. I am not looking forward to the first 70-degree day because I expect mass chaos, fear, noise, and anxiety. I mean, from my office, I hear it on Broad Street and I get a pit in my stomach. And we've all probably been in those, I don't know what to call them, that traffic, just say. What in God's name can we do about this?
Well, let me just break that issue apart for a second, right? Because I live in Center City, I live on Pine Street, and they come by my house. So I live with this. We do a lot of surveying of people in Center City. And if you live in Center City, it's the number one issue. If you work and visit here, it's way down on the list, okay? Because you're not here late at night. If you're over 55, it drives you crazy. If you're under 35, it's a minor kind of cool thing, right?
Well,
So there's
let's interrupt and look around.
yeah, no, I know the audience I'm talking to.
Paul, I'm younger than 55.
No.
Drives me nuts.
Michael, you can check out on this one.
I just want to highlight that it's experienced in different ways by different age groups, okay? Look, I think number one, it should be illegal to ride an unlicensed vehicle with no muffler the wrong way down the street. And you
But
clear.
Paul, it is illegal.
No, it is not in Philadelphia. It's just allowed at this moment. Walking here, there were 4 motorcycles went right in front of the Union League tonight on a, what was it, 48 degrees. So you clearly need to empower the police to do this. And they've been directed to stand down on this issue. So they clearly need to enforce this issue. And I think it's one of those real basic quality of life issues. But I will tell you, there will not be unanimity around that issue. In this room, there will be. But this is not exactly demographically representative of the whole city. We need to recognize that.
Despite your age, Michael, what are your thoughts?
You're too young for this
You're-
issue,
you're-
Michael.
Yeah,
You're too young.
Are you on one of those ATVs?
I am not on an
Okay.
ATV.
I saw him come here on a motorbike. I mean,
It's fascinating. I was reading about, and there's a lot of studies on what's going on in Baltimore right now. And Baltimore has this new process of what they're doing where the cities know who these people are.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a core group of 200 people, and they know exactly where they are, what they are. They know who's committing these problems with the guns and all of this stuff. Okay, and what Baltimore is doing is they're going to these families and they're saying, listen, we're going to expunge your entire record. We're going to give you a job. We're going to give you an opportunity. We just need you to stay off the streets and be a part of the program with us. And we're going to set you up for life. And it's really working in Baltimore. Okay, we could sit here and we could talk about things of like, you know what, let's build them a park. Okay, and they'll go ride around in the park. They do it because it's lawlessness, it's cool, it's hip, it's bothering the people who live here. It's a nuisance. A park's not going to do anything. Okay.
But you have to get to that park after all, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to get there?
Finding and dealing with the core group
Yeah.
of people who are having these problems and giving them an out is a solution to me. Okay, and I think that works. They've shown it in Baltimore. It's worked. I think it works with gun violence. It works with these motorcycles. It's always the same people. And that's kind of my opinion on what we need to do with this.
So let's talk about some of the great assets that this city has. You mentioned higher education, which is certainly one. Our medical industry and our hospitals, our history. There's no city that has the history of Philadelphia in the Western Hemisphere. There just isn't. Our entertainment, the food scene in Philadelphia. All of these things are great assets that a lot of cities don't have. How can we further take advantage of what we have and sell it? And I'll look to you, Paul, because this is what you've been doing a long time.
But let's just go back, because people in this room should remember this, right? We didn't have a convention center. We didn't have a tourism marketing organization. So Mayor Good starts the process and we build and open a convention center when Mayor Rendell is in office, right? We didn't have an Avenue of the Arts and Mayor Rendell spearheaded that. We created a tourism marketing organization. So we had all these assets, but it was political and business leadership that put in place the infrastructure, convention center, tourism marketing, Avenue of the Arts, which enabled us to really grow those, project those, and bring people in. These are things that we've done within the last 30 years that we can clearly do now. So yeah, we have this huge set of assets. Our educational and healthcare institutions have really given birth to a whole life sciences industry, right? This is a place where we could be an international leader. So I'm very optimistic. The assets are there and they're latent. They need to be capitalized on. They need to be built upon. They need to be marketed. But as I said, we're back with the convention business at this point. All right. The flower show's booming over there with people in right now. And, you know, what we're missing right now is a lot of international travel. We're missing travel from China, and there's a whole lot of issues beyond our control at this point. But I think we're at the verge of putting these things back in place. And again, a very strong mayor who can galvanize people, who can capitalize on what we have and deal with these negatives. Totally agree. The ATV issue is one of those incredibly annoying, aggravating things that makes you feel things are out of control. These are solvable. Here's another one. Retail theft, 1,700 retail crimes committed in Center City. There are probably 30 people who've committed 70% of them. It's the same thing. It's a small group of people. Law enforcement knows who they are. You need to target those individuals.
Short of replacing our district attorney, because
Sure.
he's not on, there's no
Sure.
election for DA. What can we do? So the cops can go and arrest those people. They don't, but even if they did, so what? Am I overstating that?
Look, I've spoken to some people and there's ways to go around this in terms of getting the Fed involved in this and going above our district attorney in terms of dealing with the gun violence. And I don't know the intricacies of the politics in terms of that. But what I do know is it is, like you're saying, it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing to our police force. Imagine pulling the same people over X amount of times. But again, I think it's to Paul's point. It's the same thing with the theft. It's the same thing with the guns. It's the same thing with the bike. It's a core group of people. And we need to get those people to a better place. Okay, everyone talks about education. Education is so important, and I agree, education is so important. But these people might not want to be educated in terms of a school, but we need to educate them in some way, shape, or form to get them off the street. And I think that we could sit there and we could bang our heads against our DA all day long. It's a problem. But all of us in this room, if there's a problem and we can't get through the door and there's a fire, are we going to stand there and just say, well, I can't get through the door? No, you're going to try and go another way. And I think that that's what we need to do a better job of figuring out solutions.
Well, we do have to remember that whether you like it or not, our district attorney was democratically elected, right?
Yeah.
That's where people were. A new mayor who takes facts and doesn't leave the police to try to push on their own, but a mayor who kind of starts quoting numbers like I was quoting, you can build a popular will to get a district attorney to do the job they were supposed to be elected to do. But that's political leadership. That's not going to happen with the police department or community groups pushing. It's going to take strong political leadership to bend that to a direction. And across the country, district attorneys like that have been recalled in more progressive cities than Philadelphia, like San Francisco. We don't have a recall mechanism, but when you build up a political momentum around the facts of the case, that can be changed. But remember, this guy was elected, whether we like it or not. And the only way, we don't have an impeachment method, or they tried in Harrisburg, and that's not going to work. So we need to work through the political process here.
So, Michael, you're running, I think you said 11. How many restaurants now?
We have 11 in Philly now. We're building 3 more in Philly, and we have 5 outside of Philly.
And the pandemic hits, and how many more do you open after the pandemic?
We've opened 3 since the pandemic, and we have 3 more in Philly that we're doing.
That's
more outside.
fantastic.
So
So
there's opportunities in this city. It's an amazing city. I think Paul spoke about this a little bit. Look, when you walk down the street and it feels empty and you see one issue, it feels like a huge issue. We don't really do lunch at any of our restaurants.
Right.
Okay, we've closed it all down because our city isn't back to what it needs to be during
At
the
lunchtime,
daytime.
right?
Okay, at nighttime, to Paul's point, we have changed our demographic. Okay, if we do studies, we do more stuff with TikTok and Instagram right now for a reason.
You're all on TikTok in this room, right?
Because our demographic has skewed much younger. Okay,
Right.
and we're busier than ever.
Right.
Okay, so there's opportunities in this city right now, but it's just the messaging.
So Paul, Center City, you got into some of the statistics with Center City. Where do you see the growth, whether it be commercial, residential? We have a lot. We were talking a little bit about office space.
Sure.
Where do you see the growth in Center City?
So what we have done incredibly well as a city, dating back to the 10-year tax abatement in 1997, we have converted 180 vacant office or industrial buildings in Center City to residential use. We have one of the most diverse mixed-use downtowns. You read the Washington Post, they lead with, you got to follow Philadelphia if you want to convert. So we need to take some of the older office buildings and convert them more to residential. But I am in no way in favor of shutting down the commercial office sector. We are on this very slow, gradual process. We were at 28% office workers back at the end of 2021. We were in the 30s. We're at 44% now, and it is slowly climbing. I think we get back. I don't know how long it will take, but there's a gradual return to office. We need that because, frankly, innovation, mentoring of younger staff, collaboration happens in person. There's a lot of things you can do remotely by Zoom, but I believe we really need to continue to rebuild, and we'll be adding office buildings. If you think about it, Morgan Lewis is building a new building. Chubb is building a new building. At the same time as we're adding more residential, we have the fastest growing residential downtown of almost many American city. So I think our strength is office, healthcare, growing life sciences, huge residential, which is supporting the restaurant industry. Retail is coming back, but not in quite as way we had it before. So I'm very optimistic. It's just moving in slow motion. And we've been through these 3 huge shocks that really, we have to take stock of exactly what we've been through. right? How often have we all lived through a city being shut down for a year or two, right? It's not within our lifetimes, right? So it's going to be a slow build back, but I'm really confident because human beings are social animals. You can spend just so much time on Zoom and WebEx and all those, but you really grow and really learn by interaction.
So, Michael, you become mayor of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We will eat well in Philadelphia. We know that. We know that, right?
What's the first thing that you tackle as mayor, if you're mayor of Philadelphia? The
Look,
very
I
first
think
thing.
it's about what the perception of our city is, and you want to feel like it's going to be safe downtown, right? And the only way to do that is to be out in the public, sending what your message is. And our mayor right now has checked out. Okay. But the new mayor needs to say, listen, we're not going to tolerate this lawlessness that goes in the city. Okay. You're going to be prosecuted. You're going to be thrown in jail. It's unacceptable. It's not going to happen. If you see him on the news every day saying that, as opposed to going, I can't wait till I'm out of office and I'm no longer in the building. Okay. It's a different game. Okay. You sense that there's leadership. Okay. Nobody's a leader by sitting at home and nobody could hear or see you. Okay, a leader has to be seen, a leader has to be involved, and a leader has to be engaged. And that's what we need from our leadership.
Let me flesh out what Michael may not know because he wasn't here. What did people remember what Ed Rendell did on his first day in office? He cleaned the bathrooms in City Hall, right? Cleaning up City Hall. That's a symbolic gesture, but that was really key. And I think it's that type of symbolic gesture and then being out there is, we need that psychologically, spiritually. The city needs someone to stand up and say, we're better than what we've been through and we're going to excel again. That's what we need from leadership. Sorry.
No, I think that's great. So in addition to saying that
Cleaning the bathrooms.
you want the job, that'd be a good thing for the
Right.
mayor to say. That you like the city and you want it to do well.
Right.
And cleaning the bathrooms, all of which I think are good things.
Clean and safe is what everyone is running on right now.
Well,
Think about it.
give me the next thing you do, Paul, as mayor.
Well, I think that is really key. I think anyone in the business community will point to the need to continue and more aggressively lower both the wage and business income and receipts tax. We create this absolutely absurd barrier. We have one of the slowest growing cities over the last 20 years because we have some of the most counterproductive tax policies. We have some of the highest poverty rate because we don't have sufficient jobs. So clean and safe is the basic, but competitive from a business point of view, from a tax point of view is absolutely next.
All right, we have some questions. We have some good ones. Tax abatement. First of all, tell us where we are with the tax abatement. I think you mentioned it already beforehand. I'm looking over at some of our developers in the room. Tell us about the program. Where is it and where is it going to go?
Okay, so there were two different types of tax abatements. The original one in 1997 was just for the conversion of vacant office and industrial buildings to residential use. That one is still intact. It has not been changed in any way. There was a second abatement in 2000, which was for the new construction of anything. Okay, that one has now been reduced to only essentially a 5-year abatement. All right, so council reduced that. There's been a lot of resentment against the tax abatement. You have to realize if this tax abatement went in place in 1997, 1998, then there's a whole lot of buildings that in 2008 and 2018 and all those years in between came off of the abatement, right? I know because Carl, where are you sitting here? We looked at Carl's building, all right? The first building he did was the National Publishing Building over here on the Schuylkill River. It had sat vacant for 10 years. It paid something like $35,000 in real estate, and it had no jobs within it. Within the first year, the construction jobs alone generated more revenue out of that building. People moving in, spending money in the city, generated jobs for the city. And that thing came off of the abatement in 2008, I think. So this was a jumpstart program. And by the way, the developer in the city that made the most use of the 10-year tax abatement, the Philadelphia Housing Authority. Okay, so we've used it for affordable housing, we've used it for middle income housing, and we've used it for upper income housing. By giving it away, it jump-started a process which has made us a really national leader, really, in terms of converting buildings. The center city population has gone up by 33% since 2000. Okay, 33%. It's up 65% since 1990. All right, this thing worked. So clearly I get its political controversy, et cetera, and we need to make sure that people in low and moderate income don't get pushed out of neighborhoods. But this is a city that was built for 2.1 million people that still only has 1.6 million people in it. We got a way to go to fill the city back up, and we need to do anything we can to get back up to that 2.1 million.
Question about jobs. Michael, maybe you can take a shot at this. Poverty level is because there are insufficient jobs. Businesses are seeking workers.
So
What's going on?
to me, it's about the wrong jobs. Okay. I was listening to somebody, we were having a conversation, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, but with all the taxes that we have here, okay, Target puts all of their corporate payroll into our city. Okay, because they don't want to be profitable here. They have zero interest because of the restrictions of the taxes here. Think about that. Okay. So to me, it's how do we create an environment where businesses want to come here? Why do we want to be here? Okay. I mean, you think about my industry. I have soda tax, I have alcohol tax, beverage tax, I have food tax, I have BERT tax, I have wage tax. Like, how many things you want to tax us on? Right? And that, I think, is the problem. Okay. If you could get the right businesses to come here, okay, that will change the poverty level. And that's what we need to do. If we could raise that up because we have the right business, I mean, I would imagine Penn's salary is a higher salary, Comcast, higher salary. Okay. We have a lot of restaurants. Our salary is much higher than a freestanding individual restaurant.
Are you looking for workers?
We're actually full right now. I mean, I think we need 1 or 2 people out of 1,500. That's what I think that we need to do. We need to be competitive with the big businesses to bring them to Philadelphia and show them how amazing our city is.
You want a proof of that point. Among the 20 largest employers in the city of Philadelphia, 2 of them are for-profit taxable entities. 2. American Airlines and Allied Security. Everybody else is tax exempt eds and meds or some type of nonprofit. That tells you a whole lot about our tax structure, right? We ought to be growing lots of financial services. We have this opportunity for life sciences, but 2 out of 20 are for. Comcast is not, they're about a 5,000 or 6,000 person firm. They're not in that top 20 in terms of employees. Penn's in the 25 to 30,000 range. Jefferson's in the 15,000 range. So not that minimizing their importance to the city, but in terms of total jobs.
So there's a bunch of questions kind of in the same vein. It's about recruiting police.
Sure.
How do we get well-trained, motivated police that want to be here? How do we do
Michael talked first part. When you pass a rule that says you have to live in the city for a year before you can apply, that's not the way to do it, right? I mean, I'm going to move from another city and hope I get a job in the police department. So that's an easy one. Get rid of that absurd rule. Here's another really interesting thing. There are cities that have a police academy or police cadet program where they hire kids who are 18 to 20, 21, 22. They have them work in police departments in administrative positions, and they reimburse them for going to community college. And when you come out of that, you can go right into the police department. You're recruiting Philadelphia. We have a program that is 1 day a week, that pays nobody, that pays nothing. And the cutoff date for that program is age 20, where you have to be 21 to be a police officer. You know who went through a police cadet program? Chuck Ramsey went through one in Chicago. Who went through someone else? Our current commissioner, Danielle Outlaw, went through a cadet program in Oakland. If you take young people in the city who want to go into law enforcement and you give them tuition reimbursement and you give them administrative jobs, you can recruit police. That's low-hanging fruit. We want neighborhood people to be in our police department, to have community policing and create incentives to do it. We have barriers. And then when we want to hire people from other cities, we erect another barrier. It's not hard to get people if you have the right incentives.
So a couple questions about homelessness. And I'll just kind of personalize this and do a little Sampson Street homelessness problem. So my take on homelessness and the homeless is not that there are more of them. I'm not sure there are or not. But there is an aggressiveness, and I have a feeling that has to do with maybe some of those wouldn't have been where they are. They would have had something else, other options perhaps in years gone by. That's just my perception. But I know on Sampson Street, because I'm there every day, there's a handful that are really problematic. What can we do
So
about
numbers here.
Yeah.
On average, over the course of the year, there are about 15,000 people who experience homelessness in Philadelphia. On any given night, there are about 6,500. 95 to 96% of those people are in shelter in getting services. There is a handful of people in the 300 to 400 person range who is here in Center City, in University City, in the subway system. These are the most addicted, the most mentally ill people. That is not the face of homelessness in Philadelphia. The face of homelessness is women with children who are eager to be in shelter and to get help. So you have a very small population here with significant challenges. These are people who are, people don't like this word, but shelter resistant. They're offered help. They don't want to come in because of mental health reasons, et cetera. We've had enormous success. I mean, I have a team out there right now. We have Project Home, Sister Mary Scullion's organization, crisis intervention trained police officers and our staff working together. We have 3 teams. We got 227 people to come off the street this last year. We've seen a reduction of 30% in the number of homeless people on the streets of Center City. Again, a two-handed approach, not police, not social services, but people partnering together. People are more visible now because there's less people on the street. When a store closes, somebody camps in their front doorway and there's no one to ask them to move in the morning. So again, there's a difference between reality and perception, but the behavior of a mentally ill person who is really in serious trouble can be very threatening to people. I don't want to minimize that in any way, but we've got the tools. We know how to deal with that issue and we can make serious progress, but clearly give to organizations like Project Home and others who are providing real help for people on the street, and don't give to people on the street because you're just enabling an addiction in most cases. But this is an issue we have done much better job than a lot of cities in resolving, even though the problem right out here on Sampson Street's recurring and can really drive people crazy.
It's changed tremendously. I mean, if you think about what a year ago or 2 years ago, I mean, I couldn't go to work without, and it's a 5-block walk, without passing 10, 15 people. They were in all the shelters outside and people in the restaurants. We had our outside structures set up, and now I would say it's marginal, the homeless situation of the wrong homeless people.
a couple questions that I think are about obstacles. There's one about L&I, red tape, taxes. So I'm going to look to you, Michael.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the challenges, especially in your type of business, doing business in Philadelphia.
It's interesting. So I met with all the candidates for mayor, and every single one brings up at some point, we're blowing it up. We're blowing it up. It's a disaster. Okay. I mean, L&I doesn't talk to health, which doesn't talk to zoning. It's just this whole logistical nightmare. Everyone is aware of it in city council who's running for mayor. I've been told that they are looking to change it. It's really, I mean, people say there's an expression, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Okay. What I always say is that's bullshit. Okay. If you can make it in Philly, you can make it anywhere. Okay. It's brutal. It's brutal doing business here, trying to get something built. I mean, fortunately for me, we have a large team. We've done this enough times where we know the process. Okay. Once you know the process, you know how to get around it. It's not a coincidence. It's the same developers building and building and building and building. Same restaurant people doing restaurant after restaurant after restaurant. I mean, it's hard to come in from out of town into Philadelphia. And I think that's one thing that we could do as Philadelphia here in this room is we need to lose this mentality. It's like it's a Philly thing or it's a Philly way, whether it's our sports teams that we're so passionate about or the businesses that we're so passionate about. We need to be a little bit more welcoming. And I think that would be a good thing for us to do.
You're not from around here, are you, Mike?
I've been here a long time.
So one last comment from both of you before we wrap this up.
okay.
And this will be my question. We have a new mayor in a year. We will have a new city council president in a year. We will have a new DA in 2 or so years. Give me your vision from, what is Philadelphia? And I'll ask you Center City, Philadelphia in your case, Paul, what does it look like? And what are the fundamental changes that can be made in the next 4 years? And what does that look like to you, Center City?
Well, I think we've touched on some of this before. We want a mayor who stands up, and we actually feel proud of saying that person's our mayor, right? You really want to have somebody who's inspiring, who represents the best of the city. That type of leadership goes a hugely long way. I will say in response to your previous question, several mayors prior to the current one had something called the Mayor's Business Action Team. And the sole purpose of that was to cut through all the other bureaucracies that also work for the mayor. You need a mayor who has a Mayor's Business Action Team who says, look, I understand we've got systems and processes, but our goal is to cut through them. And as I said, just the sense that clean and safe will no longer be the dominant issue for everybody to run on. We will take for granted that our neighborhoods are clean and safe, that we will rebuild the police department, and people will be proud to be living in the city and people want to invest here. I mean, it's a fairly simple formula, but it's really far from where we feel we are now.
Michael, where's the restaurant scene in 4 years?
No more competitors for Michael. Only his restaurants.
Look, I think, everyone think about this during COVID. How many people called us, everyone in this room, and said, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay in Philadelphia?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everyone was doing that. And I think to Paul's point is, if we had the right leader and the right cheerleader out there saying, we are safe, we have this under control, we've got this, we're going to deal with this. I think that that's what we need and want. And on top of that is, we're all business people, okay? We all live through life. We all make mistakes, okay? But we all want to see us going up the ladder a little bit, okay? Whether it's education, whether it's the police, we want to see movement. And I think that in somebody's first 100 days when they're talking about the problem, they're not going to solve the problem in their first 4 years, okay? And we all need to be patient with that and recognize that. But as long as we have a leader, we have a cheerleader, somebody who's positive, somebody can motivate people and bring them together and make incremental steps and surround themselves with the right people who could get to where we need to be, that's where we'll be as a great city again.
So we've run out of time with questions, but I believe we have a couple of candidates with us today. So if you have other questions is David O here? David's one of our mayoral candidates, and Rebecca Reinhardt is here. And I think Patrick Griffin, who's running for council. So find them tonight and get their answers on these questions, and get engaged. And as we say on Good Citizen Day, become more engaged civic leaders, as we all are here at the Union League. I want to thank Paul, Michael. Thank you for a great program. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our last of these programs. Kira, when's the last of these programs? April 25th, which is going to be we're going to try to focus on business competitiveness, and Philadelphia economy. Again, Paul, Michael, thank you. Have a great evening.
Great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, thank you. Great. Okay.
It was great fun.
The police. Okay. Great. Okay.
Anything on Joan Carter?